Thank you, guys. Y'all really like networking. I see half the group is out there still networking, which is awesome. That's why we're here. Sometimes we get to come together and watch a presentation, but the most important stuff's probably happening outside. So, my name's Jeff Short. I'm with the American Transportation Research Institute, and I'm going to be discussing today the operational costs of trucking and how those are impacted by bottlenecks, either recurring bottlenecks, that's the traffic you see every day, or event non-recurring bottlenecks. I'll share one of those with you. And finally, I'll go through a little bit of driver detention, which is the other issue. Once you get to your destination, sometimes drivers are held up at the shipper facility, sometimes for hours and hours, and it is certainly not helpful from the perspective of efficiency. So first, I'll go through who ATRI is. We are the trucking industry's not-for-profit research organization. We do research in all aspects of trucking. We are funded about 50% through donations from trucking industry stakeholders. The other 50% we work with government agencies at the federal level, Bureau of Transportation Statistics, FMCSA, Federal Highway Administration. We also work with state DOTs, particularly on truck parking and topics such as that. And we also work with local government as well. So our board of directors is made up of CEOs and presidents from these companies here. And I will also show you our research advisory committee. These folks determine what research we do as far as the industry-funded research is concerned. So this is a very diverse group of folks who get together every year, and they're given a list of about 30 projects to pick from, and some of the projects that I'm going to show you today actually were straight out of the Research Advisory Committee. So first, before we get to bottlenecks, other delay issues, let's first discuss the operational cost of trucking. So this is a report we put out every year. We've collected operational cost of trucking data since 2008, I believe. And what we look at with these data is vehicle-based costs. So you see all the vehicle-based costs, the trends here. Look at the bottom line. That is the total cost per mile to operate a truck in the U.S. We go out to carriers, we sign non-disclosure agreements, we look at their financial documents, and we benchmark what's going on with the industry. And this is the general trend. The price of everything is going upward. Now let's take a look real quick at the trend line. This is a better look at it. Since 2020, we've seen huge increases in the cost per mile for the trucking industry due to inflation, due to a really hot freight market. Freight rates now, we're technically in a freight recession, so things aren't that great, but the costs are still there. Now let's take a look here at the costs. Which costs are the biggest impacts to the industry? Fuel costs, those vary year to year. They vary quite a bit. But then on the vehicle-based side, you see truck, trailer, lease, and purchase payments. Those are some of the highest costs to the industry, and then of course driver wages, driver benefits. So right before I get into bottlenecks here, let's look at the price of a Class 8 tractor trailer. It has gone up tremendously from about $100,000 per truck back 20 years ago, and it has gone all the way up to about $170,000 per truck. This is just a standard Class 8 diesel truck. If you look at some of the other trucks out there, some of the trucks like battery electric trucks that the state of California was pushing our industry to, those were around $450,000 roughly, plus chargers, et cetera, et cetera. So when this equipment is not moving efficiently, these trucking companies and truck drivers are not getting their bang for the buck, if you will. If a truck that costs $170,000 is going 5 miles per hour on the interstate, this is a real problem to the end calculation. If that truck is sitting for 6 hours at a shipper facility, that's also going to be a problem. So, how do we measure truck bottlenecks? I've been probably working with truck GPS data for 20 years now with ATRI, maybe 21 years. It's really fascinating stuff. This is a snapshot of a moment in time of the trucks we are receiving data from anonymously. I have no idea whose trucks they are. What I'm getting is average speed, location, that sort of information. And we can drill down to bottleneck locations. This is the infamous George Washington Bridge. It's the worst bottleneck in the United States. Nobody wants to go to New York City to drive a truck. I've never heard of anyone who wants to. I actually forget what the toll is right now, but it's probably going to take you 40 minutes to get across it, and then you have to pay $100 or $150, something like that, toll for a truck driver. So what we do with those data is on an annual basis, you can see all of this on our website. I should have mentioned that earlier, truckingresearch.org. We have every year of bottlenecks. My colleague over there, Carla, puts these all together on the internet, makes it look nice. I do a lot of the data crunching and that sort of thing. So what we have here are the worst bottlenecks in the United States, and you see a bit of representation here in the Southeast, and I'll get to total cost of congestion for the entire United States. But here are the top 10. We see a couple of them in Atlanta, Nashville, Houston. Nashville is certainly a city that's been growing, but its infrastructure hasn't been growing with it. Chattanooga is another one that gets on here quite a bit, and there are at least there are 9 or 10 in Georgia that are on the top 100 list. And these are not fun places to drive. I'm based in Atlanta, so I know this one pretty well. You see, this is Spaghetti Junction, Interstate 85 at 285, and if anyone's familiar with it, the average speed over on that chart over there gets down to about 15 miles per hour for many, 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 many miles. It can back up all directions, and it's a huge delay. It's all driven, I would say, by car traffic, and I can actually prove that. But first, let's not forget, this is a good thing. To have this much traffic, that means there's a good economy. But can we go ahead and fix that? Can we fix this infrastructure so that throughput meets the needs of the economy? So here's how I can prove that those speeds are caused by cars. Of course, during COVID, trucks kept moving. And that green line is the average truck speed through the bottleneck during COVID-19. Trucks were moving goods around the country. You can go through this bottleneck at 55 miles per hour, no problem. It's possible. It's just not feasible with all of the vehicles that are trying to get through there at one time. Here's another location. This is the west side of Atlanta. This is I-20 at 285. Some of you may have driven that yesterday. It's a real awful southbound bottleneck into I-20. Trucks are backed up for probably 10 miles going down into this bottleneck, and then they turn onto I-20 from 285, and go up a hill for about a mile. In the afternoon, that hill is facing into the sun. It's not a great location, but here is some of the stuff we think this bottleneck list has helped. This is one of the examples, one of the first examples. Chicago Circle Interchange, it is now called something else, was one of the worst bottlenecks in the country, if not the worst. And in the state of Illinois' press release, they said, this is the worst truck bottleneck in the country. We need to solve this. We are investing I think it started at $400 million. It probably went into the billions. But that's what it takes to fix these bottlenecks. And here you see this bottleneck is getting redone. They're going to try to fix it. We will be able to, with our GPS data, with our tools, we will be able to follow how much improvement there is and put a dollar figure onto that improvement. And I'm sure it will actually be well worth the investment over the next 20, 25 years for certain. So I've shown you kind of the pinpoint areas where the top bottlenecks are. We also do a cost of congestion report, and this looks at the total cost of congestion in the United States on an annual basis. Unfortunately, some of the data inputs we use, they are from a federal data source, so they are a little delayed. So our most recent one is 2022 cost of congestion. We will be putting out 2023 at some point in the future, of course. So we calculated the cost in the entire United States on all roads. We looked at the entire national highway system. We didn't go below that. And we came up with $108 billion. That was the highest on record. We've been doing this for a couple years. I'll show you that in a second. So those congestion costs, which are based in part on the operational cost of trucking, those are $7,500 per truck. There's 1.2 billion hours of delay. I can't really fathom what that means, but that's what the calculation came out to. That's a lot of hours wasted. It's the equivalent of nearly 500,000 truck drivers sitting still for an entire year. And of course, there's an environmental side to it. It's about $32 billion worth of diesel wasted, or 6.4 million gallons. So this is the cost of congestion trend since 2016. You see it starting to go up, and then in 2019, there was kind of a dip in the economy right before COVID. COVID drove things down, certainly helped with the average speed of trucks, kept them doing a normal speed, that 55 through a bottleneck like Spaghetti Junction. But those costs have gone up substantially. I suspect they're going to go up even further in 23 and probably a little stable from there moving forward. What are the top states? I've highlighted in red those Rhonda and I deemed southeast. I checked with her, so I could put Texas on the list. Texas is number 1 there. Florida, Georgia's number 5, then down Louisiana and Tennessee. Louisiana's an interesting one. I am told that the issue with Louisiana is that there's not a lot of investment, and tell me if I'm wrong, please. I've been told over and over again that there's not a lot of investment in the roadway, and they are kind of deteriorating, and that certainly impacts your ability to drive at a normal rate. So moving on to non-recurring congestion, this is the type of stuff that is typically captured in the annual cost of congestion costs, but certainly these are very interesting things. And I've got an example here of Hurricane Helene. These are truck flows on a normal day. I-40 is a very important highway. And when that went down, trucks were diverting all over the place and adding huge costs to their trips. So let's go forward. This is Helene moving in, and then it got cut off. No trucks are going down I-40. There's still trucks trying to get across, trying to get into the area. during Helene and in the days after. But what we see here is lots of trucks heading down Interstate 85. And if I were to zoom out, you'd see a lot of truck trips deciding to go through that bottleneck in Atlanta that I just showed you, along with a couple other bottlenecks, because this piece of infrastructure is so important. And you can certainly calculate the cost of these as well. So finally, I'll end with the costs and consequences of truck driver detention. This report is on our website, truckingresearch.org, along with all the others. So what we did, we surveyed drivers across 3 years on how long they were spending in detention, and this also had a safety impact, aspect as well. So looking here, the darker shade is the most recent survey. You see 29% of our respondents, people who took this survey in 2023, were experiencing driver detention of up to 2 hours. The higher end time periods, 2 to 4 hours post-COVID, it's about 5% of stops for drivers, but overall it's about 40% of drivers are experiencing this sort of thing. So they're being held for hours and hours at a time, and not out on the road moving. During COVID, in fact, one of my board members in particular pointed this out to me. Certainly those bottlenecks have gone away, but because of COVID, because folks were not moving, were not at warehouses, were not at shipper and receiver facilities because of COVID restrictions, there weren't enough of them, that sort of thing. All of that delay shifted over to driver detention. Drivers waiting to unload their goods, the supply chain was kind of locked up. So this can be as bad, if not worse, than some of the congestion we see on the roadways. And then finally, we did a little study with North Carolina State on this as well as part of this research. And the gist of this chart is detained trucks drive faster 24 hours and before, after and before detention, 14% faster in a full 48-hour period. At the end of the day, what this means is drivers are more anxious when they've lost time at a during a driver detention event. So they are going to drive faster. That's always been the theory. We went and actually tested it with actual trucks, and it turned out to be true. So overall, the total cost of detention, 135 million lost productive hours, 72 million wasted gallons of diesel. You can add that up with the other diesel lost in bottlenecks. Lots of miles lost, billions of miles lost, billions of unreimbursed direct expenses, and about 11 billion in lost revenue overall. So with that, I think I have some time for questions. Happy to take questions. Any question works. Come on, folks. No, yeah, there we go.
Jeff, when you were looking at Hurricane Helene, the bottlenecks, did you see any of the other, we knew we had ancillary problems with trucks that were using routes that weren't closed, but when you had a volume of trucks on it, the speeds got so slow, we ended up seeing roads with tire fires. Did that show up as any in research, or were you just looking at where there were bottlenecks? Because
we did not dig that deep.
Okay.
We did not dig that deep into that particular event, but certainly the bridge collapse up in Baltimore, you see lots of congestion on Baltimore's local roadways that wouldn't normally have been there. And certainly a lot of trucks that carried hazmat had to route all the way around the place.
Because I think there's a lesson to be learned out of that, and you and I can talk about it, where we close roads based on, we had detour, we worked, obviously the Eastern Coalition, we worked with our states, putting out what were closed and what were detour routes. But the one problem that we ran into is roads that weren't closed. I'm not a modeling person, but if you had modeled a 50% increase in trucks on that grade, you would have begun to see what it did with travel time, or with ability to maintain speeds.
Yeah.
So we ended up having, law enforcement and fire personnel trying to deal with tire fires. So I think there is a conversation that has to be had when you look at detours and resiliency, particularly in some of the states in our corridor that move to east-west and start running into some grade issues. Should we be thinking differently about closures as opposed to just throughput and bottlenecks, but can this become a bottleneck?
Mm-hmm. Agree. Way back there.
Good morning. I don't have a question, but this is great research. Thank you for presenting. But can you go back to that slide that showed it was a map of the U.S. and had red lines where all the bottlenecks were? That's it. Yes, thank you.
I can send you the presentation too if you give me a card. If anyone wants to give me a card, I'll send this presentation to you.
Greg Candy from Louisiana. Who are you speaking with when it comes to investing in Louisiana? Who told you that?
I was speaking with folks from the state who will remain unnamed, but we can certainly have a conversation afterwards.
Well, I can tell you, we need a loop for sure. We've been need a loop, but okay. That's all I want to know.
I knew I was going to get in trouble for that. All righty, well, thank you,
Anyone
folks.
else?
Oh,
Is this just based off of GPS data? Is there any other data points that y'all are pulling or able to get from state DOTs?
we are pulling volume data from state DOTs all the time for our research. We're also pulling that from Federal Highway Administration so that we only have a sample of all the trucks that are out there. That helps us put that expansion factor, if you will, on our truck parking studies, on our traffic studies also. And there is a volume component to the bottlenecks. If only one truck is being delayed, it's not a truck bottleneck. It is for that driver, but so certainly they're ranked also by how much volume is getting delayed. All right. I'll turn it back to Ron.
Thank you, Jeff. Next, we have Shannon coming back to us again this year. Shannon Millsaps, she's the Chief Operating Officer from the Thrive Regional Partnership. Again, we're talking partnerships, so come on up, Shannon, and we'll get switched over here.
Hey, y'all. While she's doing that, man, I already have 2 pages of notes. Anybody else taking notes like I'm taking notes?
All right, let's see. Where are you here? Right there. Is that the, yeah, final. And you're going to do the, okay. Did I click the right thing? Is it PDF or PowerPoint?
It's PDF.
Okay. Why is it asking to sign? It's telling us to sign in.
This is a PDF. You want the PDF or you want the PowerPoint?
It's probably just a PDF. I don't think I sent. Sorry about that.
That's okay. I shouldn't have to do this.
Just closed it out.
Everybody stretch. Stretch. I promise I won't go over.
Hey, we just have, it's a PDF, but it
I
won't.
can open it full screen.
Okay.
I should be able to make this. Hang on. Where's present? Hmm? Problem is, it's not normal aspect ratio. There we go, presentation mode. Sweet.
So just arrow. Oh,
Yeah, left and right.
sweet.
You got it.
All right, now with all that anticipation, I got to pull something good off here. Hi, everybody. Thank you for sticking with us here, and thank you for inviting me, Stephanie, to be a part of this summit again. I just wanted to quickly, before I sort of introduce myself, Shannon, Millsaps, COO of Thrive Regional Partnership. I'll say I am going to talk about our organization, which is a regional planning and community development organization called Thrive Regional Partnership. A show of hands in the room, anyone, I know I have some friends in the room, who has heard about Thrive and the work that we're doing in the greater Chattanooga region? Oh, hey, that's almost half. That's great. Well, I don't have to talk about the framework of coalitions because Stephanie already did that for me, which is fantastic. Dr. Jones opened us this morning talking about transportation as it touches all of our lives. And I think that even Chris mentioned who's not in the room, right? I think about all of us have a vested interest in transportation, in the safe movement, the efficient movement of freight, and I'm thrilled to be able to talk about that a little bit in the way that Thrive does that work in the Chattanooga region. The mayor started us off by saying that progress isn't cheap. He's right about that. My boss says progress moves at the speed of trust. So I want to leave you with that additional progress quote. Progress moves at the speed of trust, and trust moves at the speed of relationships. And that's what we're here to do today. And so I'm thrilled to be able to talk about our Freight Mobility Coalition, more specifically some of the research that we've been engaging in, how we inspire responsible growth in the Chattanooga region, maybe pull off a live demo if I have time. If I do not have time, we do have an exhibit table in the back, and my colleague Mark Roberts here in the center of the room will be back there with me, and we'd be happy to show you a demonstration one-on-one or gathered around the table if I can't quite get to that today. But who is Thrive? Let's make sure I'm going in the right direction here. For those of you who don't know, so we're a nonprofit organization. We're based in Chattanooga, Tennessee. This is a look at our footprint. Stephanie mentioned Chattanooga and the necessity of us working across state and county lines. Dan Palmy from TDOT, a good friend, says freight knows no boundaries. And that is true. The iPhone that I may purchase in a few weeks, because mine is rapidly dying, won't know when it crosses a state line in a driver's truck. But as a nonprofit organization based in the greater Chattanooga region, our mission is to inspire responsible growth. What does that mean? That means that as we grow in industry and we grow in population, we can do that in a responsible way and not at the sake of our natural environment. So when you go back to the table back there, you're also going to see a brochure about our Thriving Gardens program. What's that doing here? You're going to see a map of our region, and it's going to encourage you to explore our region and all of the wonderful outdoor recreation and natural assets that it has to offer. Just like the outdoor economy moves our economy, so does freight. And so we are also convening our Freight Mobility Coalition, which is an organization, groups 40, 45 now entities, local nonprofits, transportation planners, local government and elected leaders, policymakers, private carriers, manufacturers that depend on the movement of freight for their raw materials and their finished product. We're pulling all of those groups together to have conversations about how we move freight more efficiently, safer, and easier through the greater Chattanooga region. So what is growth? The U.S. population is growing. Our data and research analysts put this slide together for a recent meeting, and I just stole it. R&D works the best. But looking at the last 4 years, the U.S. South has had the highest growth rate for a U.S. region, accounting for more than 70% of our overall growth. Looking just at our tri-state, again, we work across 16 counties in Tennessee, Georgia, and Alabama. All three are in the top 20 growth states. Georgia and Tennessee in the top 10, and Georgia even in the top 5. Together, these three states added over 900,000 residents, accounting for over 10% of that national growth. So digging deeper into only our 16 county footprint, our region added over 40,000 residents in the last 4 years, with almost all of our counties experiencing population growth. And that 40,000 growth, almost 5% of the overall growth across those three states. Why does that matter? Because we've already heard the point this morning, we all share the roads. And it's just as important to talk about and engage the general public and our commuters in better understanding why there are so many trucks on the road in and around Chattanooga. When we talk about congestion, we can't just talk about it as a traffic headache, although I live right beside the 2475 split, and so I experience that headache from time to time. It means crashes that take lives. Some of you have probably seen that eye-catching video most recently of flooding on I-24 right there at the 75 split, and what a shock that was. So resilient infrastructure, critical. Congestion also means higher shipping costs for businesses, ultimately higher prices for consumers. I was just pulling up a quick figure as Jeff was talking. The annual truck delay in the Chattanooga area amounts to 563,000 hours lost. For trucks, that is a congestion cost of more than $37 million when you account for travel time and operating expenses. Additionally, that causes more than 1 million gallons of wasted fuel. It also means more emissions for idling trucks. We talk about the natural environment. Thrive deeply cares about what that means and how we can increase sustainability in this industry. And at the national level, it means supply chains that are less reliable. Congestion means less efficiency, more vulnerability to disruption. All of these reasons why we should be coming together, why we're here today, and why Thrive is doing the work that it's doing, and why I'm proud to wake up every day thinking about how we do this better. I do have a video. I don't know if it will play, but I'm going to give it a go. I'm going to give it a try. Doesn't look like it will. That's okay. The video I will share with you later, and it'll be in a slide deck that I'm happy to provide to everybody. What that video showed was a little bit about why we convene our Freight Mobility Coalition, setting the stage for Chattanooga. If you haven't been there, you can see here, Chattanooga's kind of in the heart of that big square. That square, this map in particular, was part of an FHWA grant that Thrive came alongside TDOT to perform a couple of years ago, finished that up right in the middle of the pandemic. Chattanooga is at the heart of Freight Alley. We have 20% of our workforce is involved in the transportation industry. Another 20% of our workforce is in freight-dependent manufacturing. 40% of our region's workforce relies on that safe and efficient movement of freight. And Chattanooga, right in the middle. 75 and 24 converge. Over 20,000 trucks are traveling through that interchange every single day. Makes it one of the busiest freight corridors in the country. And when trucks back up here, it doesn't just affect Tennessee, it affects Georgia, it affects Alabama. That slide from Helene is really interesting because the trucks that couldn't get down I-40, we were starting to have issues in rural communities like Polk County, where my family's from, along US 64, when those trucks are just trying to get through, and one of the quickest routes to get from the Asheville area into Chattanooga, if you needed to, was going to be that I-60 or that US 64 corridor through Polk County. And if you've been through that, that's the Ocoee River Gorge. One accident and you're stuck for hours, right? So how we use data is something that's really important to us as an organization. We're looking at Like I said, the recent flooding, those tragic crashes, we're partnering with folks like FMCSA, federal entities, folks like you, our trucking association friends in the room, law enforcement, to better understand what data we can pull together and help support our communities in making better decisions. Widening alone isn't going to fix it. There was an op-ed, if you subscribe to the Chattanooga Times Free Press or don't, I'm happy to share that article. Our president and CEO wrote an op-ed that landed this past Sunday talking about how there is no single solution to Chattanooga's freight problems. Chattanooga experiences 80% through traffic. So of all those trucks that come through, 80% of them are just passing through. They have no origin, no destination within our 16-county region. TDOT is moving forward, doing a lot of incredible work with a widening project through Moccasin Bend, which you kind of see in this slide here. That's going to help, but history tells us that widening alone isn't going to fix congestion, right? It just delays it. There is induced demand. If you build it, they will come. More lanes eventually invite more traffic. So in Chattanooga and in the Chattanooga region, we're looking at layered approaches, widening as a tool, combined with technology, multimodal freight movement, smarter planning. I'll say here, because it's in the op-ed, so I'm not dropping any knowledge that isn't already public. We're working with our state legislators in Tennessee to better understand how choice lanes, which you may have heard about if you're from the Tennessee area, how choice lane construction that's starting in Murfreesboro in the Nashville area, Chattanooga is being eyed for that. It's along this same Moccasin Bend corridor. We're talking about how can we potentially advocate for truck usage of those lanes? What does it look like if the Chattanooga region becomes a pilot for CMV only lanes, potentially? Georgia's doing that, 41 miles of CMV only lanes in south of Atlanta. What does that look like if Chattanooga becomes the pilot area for a conversation like that? Multimodal freight, another solution, taking some of that freight off of our interstates altogether. We're very excited to see the Chickamauga Lock project come to completion. When it's done, it'll be able to push 9 barge tows through the Chickamauga Lock. But we've got to make that incentive, we've got to incentivize that multimodal usage and look at how we can better maximize the usage of our inland waterways. Chattanooga is unique in that we have a river. We've got a lot of rail access, lots of roads, and a runway. We're pulling in air freight at the Chattanooga airport data all the time to better understand, again, how do we maximize the usage of these other modalities to free up some of that space on our roadways. Looking at freight congestion with bottlenecks, we do have 2 of those in Chattanooga still, number 56 and number 28. We are not quite in the top 10 anymore, although I know we did surface in there once or twice. But this is a heat density map based off of our data analysis that shows the biggest problem in the Chattanooga region is that Moccasin Bend corridor. We have more than, let me back up and say, in that 2020 FHWA work, we projected 33 million tons of freight moving through our region along that roadway by 2035. In 2022, 39 million tons of freight moved along that roadway, 13 years ahead of schedule. And now, based on the freight analysis framework data that we're looking at in those projections, that figure is expected to rise to 69 million tons of freight by 2050. And that's just going one way. So when you consider both sides of the road there at Moccasin Bend, we're talking about more like 132 million tons of truck-borne freight by the year 2050, which means we've got to do something today, right? Nothing moves quickly in the world of transportation. But that's why we as an organization are waking up every day thinking about this. Like I mentioned, the concentration of employment for us and manufacturers and freight activity really increases this pressure on our communities, everything from housing and physical infrastructure needs to infrastructure condition. When you layer that truck volume, which is still that interstate roadway, and I'll mention that little weird claw thing. That's the DeButch yard, so that's rail yard, that's a rail connector, so that's a lot of rail stuff that's coming off rail or going onto rail there and coming onto our roadways. But that additional heat map you see now is commuting patterns. Those are drivers who drive themselves to work every day, alone in their car, right? So you've got this perfect conglomeration of challenges in the region with more than 100,000 vehicles on the road every day, and more than 20% of those are trucks. As I mentioned, around the bend, tonnage is expected to increase more than up to 78% to over 69 million tons, or 69,000 K tons. Easier to say 69 million. Those daily truck trips also expected to increase by 80%. Why does any of this matter? Strategies for success sound technical. They affect all of us. For commuters, safer, shorter drives. For truck drivers as well. Businesses, it's more reliable shipping, competitive edge. For communities, this is cleaner air and fewer disruptions. And for local governments, it's infrastructure investment that pays dividends for decades. So why is Thrive here? At Thrive, we don't build roads. I don't run a freight company. I'm not an engineer. I'm a journalist by trade who loves this region and loves the work that I do every day. What we do is convene. I said our mission is to inspire responsible growth. Inspiration. We're working with local governments to build capacity. We're providing them with data so they can make regionally relevant, better decisions based on sound data and information. We're bringing together with our Freight Mobility Coalition, our DOTs, industry leaders, policymakers, community voices from across these 3 states. We convene our annual Tri-State Summit, which I'll share hopefully in just a moment at the end here. You're all invited, October 1st and 2nd. Actually, I think the cost of those tickets goes up September 1, so get on it this week. But we're convening that summit so we can explore these solutions collaboratively. Chris Spear from American Trucking Association is joining us this year. Really excited for him to kick off day 2 of our summit in Chattanooga. So we started asking ourselves, how do we support communities in better understanding? What if every county, what if every city, what if every utility, every economic developer in the region had access to a single interactive map that showed them not just what was built, but what was moving through? A living atlas of sorts, future infrastructure, layered, searchable, updatable. That's what we set out to build with the Thrive Regional Infrastructure Portal, which again, we'll be able to do a demonstration for you in the back. But it is a website in its simplest form, but it was built to solve a problem. These are some of those issues. We started asking local governments and utilities a simple question: what is getting in the way of you making better decisions? What is getting in the way of your infrastructure priorities? And the answers that we got were, we don't know what's happening outside of our municipality. We answer to our taxpayers, and we don't know what's going on just across that state or county or municipal line. We find out too late about nearby road widenings or utility upgrades. Our projects get delayed because no one is looking at the full picture. So in short, there was no shared understanding or shared map of what was happening. So we set out to fix that. Fix it as best we could with a dynamic, living and breathing, searchable map called TRIP. It is the product of deep collaboration to every point that you heard this morning. We had county engineers and planners at the table who know the timing and the nuance of local road projects. We had trucking logistics companies at the table, regional MPOs, DOTs, technologists and GIS professionals, data scientists who could help us think about interoperability and user experience. And built what TRIP is today. Like I said, I don't know time-wise if I'll have time for a demo up here, but please come back and see us so I can show you the power of this platform. Talked about data and what feeds it. It's everything from current roadway infrastructure like freight analysis framework data, freight and logistics access, major economic development sites, traffic incident data and large truck crash information. Environmental and topographical context, because again, Chattanooga has mountains and a river and rail lines and things we have to consider when we look at how we build our infrastructure better. It's a lot of, it's 52 current data sets, and we have plans for more. I don't think I'll have time this morning to talk about it fully, but again, I'd love to engage with you in the back about some work that is being funded now by the Appalachian Regional Commission to expand this platform even greater. What did we learn from this? Data diplomacy matters. Trust is everything when you're asking counties and utilities and private industry to share their plans with you, and how you protect their private information while also making available things that can better inform decisions. We focused on relationships first and technology second. Simplicity matters. We are not all technical people. So how do we resist the urge to over-engineer something and just make it easy to understand? And people use what helps them. So once we've started getting some success stories in, we love to share those. Adoption is growing. We've had counties use this to inform economic developers on freight movement. We've had communities use this to make the argument to Loves that they need to add a trucking facility with truck parking into their small community in North Alabama. What is next? Shared opportunities. This is where you all come in, so get ready. Our region is growing, and how we grow matters. It is each of you that shape everything that is happening in our freight and transportation logistics industry every day. With TRIP, our goal is to ensure that those efforts are better informed and better aligned and more impactful, but we need you to see yourselves in this work. To see TRIP not as a tool, but as a platform for shared problem solving. Said this in a meeting the other day. Shared challenges require shared solutions. It is about collaboration. It's about building. It's about consent, not building consensus, right? We're not always going to agree on the final way that a project unfolds, but if we see ourselves in it and have a voice in it, we can get behind it, generally speaking. So we're building collaborative freight mobility benchmarks so that we can measure and monitor the success of things that are happening in and around our region. Safety is the #1 benchmark. It's a no-brainer. Efficiency, reliability, sustainability also touched on in those benchmarks. We're updating data and additional tools and building more GIS tools. We're assisting communities in identifying projects. There are 76 municipalities within our 16 counties, 3 states, 16 counties, 76 municipalities. That's 92 plus 95 different heads of government. They all have their own priorities and their own regulations and their own challenges. But guess what? In Chattanooga, all of us are far more alike than we are different in the challenges, but as Dr. Steele put it, the opportunities that we have in front of us. So a shared opportunity is what you have to engage with us. I do have a couple of minutes, so I'm very quickly going to talk to you about the Thrive Regional Resource Hub, which is an Appalachian Regional Commission grant under their ARISE program. For us, this is driving connectivity and resilience in the cradle of Southern Appalachia. In partnership with ARC, they are contributing $2.87 million to this project over 5 years. I have to say that. Thank you, ARC, for 56% of that project. This is a $5 million project over 5 years that encompasses all of the things that Thrive has going on, but there is some specific work that I'm really excited about in transportation. That TRIP model that you can engage with back here and that I'm talking about now, as a part of that project, we partnered with Cleveland State Community College. Cleveland State and Georgia Tech both submitted RFPs to build our original platform. Georgia Tech won. Cleveland State is like, yeah, I get it, you know. But I and our Freight Mobility Coalition said, what if you come alongside us and we're able to somehow support the build out of your logistics and supply chain management program while we're also building this platform for community use. We were able to do that, and I'm thrilled to say we just graduated. After that 2-year program, Cleveland State graduated their first 7 students from their logistics and supply chain management program. As part of their capstone, they used TRIP to do their research. So this wasn't like when I was in school and I was blowing dust off of library books and trying to read case studies and figure out what was going on. These were 7 students who got paid apprenticeships with a company in the region, and then they were tasked as their final project, as their capstone, to research a challenge that logistics company or that industry partner had using TRIP, so using real world, regionally relevant information to better research that challenge and then pitch it back to the company. All 7 of those students got jobs. There's now a company that's north of Chattanooga in the Etowah area who's utilizing the Appalachian Regional Port, the inland port facility in Murray County, to move some of their freight directly from the Port of Savannah on rail all the way to Etowah without having to put it on a truck in Atlanta. Real change is happening because these students are leaving programs better understanding what's actually happening in their communities. And we're thrilled that now through ARISE, we're not only going to be able to expand the training for that model, but we're going to expand that curriculum to 6 more high schools and colleges in and around the Chattanooga area. Northeast Alabama Community College, Dalton State, Chattanooga State, Catoosa County College and Career Academy, and start to affect the workforce pipeline that we all desperately need in our roles, and students coming out of these programs better understanding the challenges that we face. So that's a really exciting part of that with TRIP. And then I'll also mention quickly that the hub development itself, the resource hub itself, is, you don't have to read all that, is going to layer our transportation and infrastructure data with our environmental data and with our historical arts and cultural asset data. So again, we can put into people's hands the information they need to better project forward what the challenges are, what the challenges may be in the future, how do I adapt technology now to make the decisions that I need for my community, for my county, for my state, to make better decisions. And so, again, thrilled with all of the partners in this group and beyond, and I could talk for days about Arise and would love to, and the impact that that's having on students and their programs. I'll mention quickly, because some of these folks on this list are in the room, thank you for all the partners who have supported this work. If you're not on this list, come see me, let's get you on the list. I'd love to include you in the work that we're doing. I am a nonprofit, so I have to say we're still actively, courting local match. So if anybody has dollars that they're trying to figure out how to spend, I can help you spend those. Just let me know. And then lastly, I want to invite you to the Tri-State Summit. This video won't play, but again, we are literally and figuratively at a crossroads, and I have 2 minutes, so perfect timing. Freight congestion is not going to solve itself, and widening alone will not solve the issue. There is no silver bullet in the Chattanooga region. I don't know about all of y'all's regions, but I can tell you that in the 16 county footprint that we serve and in the 35 county makeup of the Thrive Regional Infrastructure Portal, we have the minds, we have the talent, and we have the partnerships, not just in our region, but in this room to lead the nation on solutions that we need. Thrive's Freight Mobility Coalition, and again, our flagship event, the Tri-State Summit, bring together voices from across Tennessee, Georgia, and Alabama to tackle these challenges collaboratively. And I invite you, I implore you to please join us if you aren't already. Let's roll up our sleeves and get to work. Thank you. Oh, I do have time if someone has a question. I was not anticipating this, but I can be ready. I'm good on the fly. No questions. A question about, like, you made that sound so easy. How do I do that? Doug Smith back there, my buddy Doug asked, are there Thrives anywhere else in the country? Is there an organization quite like yours doing the things you're doing and on the scale you're doing them? I don't know. I don't think so, but if you find them, point them my direction because I'd love to learn with them. But if you are thinking, man, I wish I had an organization like Thrive where I am, come talk to me. Let's figure out how we can help use our framework and our model to support the work that you're doing, even if it's not in our footprint or in our states. Thank you.